I started on the technology side. So I worked at Microsoft and SAP Labs as an engineer and technical product manager. And then I switched more to the business side. I worked for Bain & Company. And after that, I worked for Bridgewater Associates, which is the world's largest hedge fund in Connecticut. There I saw about 60 billion in trades on a daily basis. I was on the portfolio construction side. And after that, went back to the West Coast, to Stanford, to get my graduate degree in management science, and started my first Web 2 unicorn company that was Y Combinator backed, called Garten, out of Stanford. Ran that for a number of years, eventually sold the company. But in late 2022, my classmate from Stanford actually called me up and he said, hey, 5 years ago I backed this company called Conflux and Fun, want to do something more global scale. Are you interested in meeting up with them? And I was ready, I think, for something new at that point. And 6 months of co-founder dating later, I was like, wow, Ming and Fun are like the best engineers I've ever worked with. Like, it doesn't matter what we start, we just have to start something now. And so that was May of 2023. And so about 2 years ago. And then we spent some time figuring out what the actual business model is, what we want to build. And it's been a great journey since then. Yeah, our mission is to make AI a public good. And so what does that mean? We want people to participate in AI directly, contribute their data, contribute their compute, but then also benefit from it and have ownership over AI as well. So that it's not just a handful of companies basically dictating what they believe AI should be, that the community is actually actively building it. And building it in such a way that AI is safe, verifiable, transparent, and then of course community owned. And so we provide all of the infrastructure layers to make that a reality. From an infinitely scalable layer 1 to a high performance storage network, to a high-performance compute network where you can do things like inference, fine-tuning, pre-training as well eventually. And then we will have multiple layers over the time, like an AI alignment layer that's effectively like a police force to make sure that AI stays safe over time. Yeah, so I kind of mentioned them already. So there's certain things you can do with Web3 AI or decentralized AI that you can't easily do with black box AI. So for example, we envision a future where, let's say I happen to know 10 of the best coders that know how to code Solidity code. I want to bring them together. Let's train a model together. Let's provide our compute, provide our data, and then get tokens in return for our contribution. Release that model, have it be better than the state-of-the-art model. Let's say it's like Claude or something in that particular domain, and then have the community actively use it, fine-tune it, improve it over time. And so that's a very different version of reality, where the community is actively building something and building expert models that outperform kind of state-of-the-art models. So that's one vision of the future. Another vision is that if we are to succeed, we need AI that stays safe. So I look at it as a spectrum. There's individual use cases like, I don't know, order me a pizza, like book this travel, to societal level use cases where, let's say, AI starts running airports, manufacturing facilities, governance systems, administrative systems. Wouldn't you want to know what's underneath the hood? Wouldn't you be able to want to know what to verify AI? Where did the data come from? Who labeled the data? Like what censorship decisions were being made for the model? What decisions is the model making themselves? And are there safeguards in place for that model? If it makes the wrong decisions, can we remove resources away from it? If you get it wrong, then let's say a model runs an airport or an agent runs an airport and it starts blackmailing you saying, hey, if you don't give me more resources, I'm going to make these airplanes crash into another.
Yeah.
And that could be a real issue because AI, black box AI, is being trained like human beings with human data. And so these models are already starting to exhibit these types of characteristics like access to power, not being wanting to live, not being shut off, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so there's different incentives at different layers. The validator is specifically on the layer 1 because you need to validate effectively transactions. You need to come up with a view that's generally shared within the network. And so by being a validator, you get tokens and reward in the form of transaction fees effectively. And then on top of that, other users, or let's say the foundation, can also delegate stake to those validators. And so those validators can also make a staking return for providing security to the network. And so those are the two incentives effectively as a validator. So just because you have a lot of tokens, you can't easily change the code that's actually running the chain. So for example, if you wanted to change like, instead of making it 500 tokens to run a validator, I want to make it 5 million tokens, well, that would require a hard fork of the chain, which is not very easily done, or impossible if you're just a simple whale, effectively. So there's a lot of security built into the system and the way it's effectively programmed. You could try to set up kind of your own validator and then have a different version of the chain as well, but that's the reason why you have a decentralized network, because then 99% of the other validators will not agree with your version of the chain and will basically start slashing you because you're trying to give a different version of the truth. Quite a lot. I think the value proposition resonates, where you don't give up much performance compared to centralized systems, but you gain up to 95% cost savings, for example. Wow. That's a great value proposition. We also learned that people are building a lot of really interesting things. So anything from like an AI launch platform in the form of AIverse to decentralized federated learning. If you want to keep your data completely private, but you still want to build a model with other participants across the network, you can do that. So it's actually, I think it's Korean founders, actually, Volcanium Labs, that's building on the chain. There's other types of use cases where you have a company that's looking at your biometric data and then giving you recommendations based on that biometric data, dormant AI, for example. So there's many really interesting use cases that we observed of people that said like, wow, this chain is built for AI use cases. I need to be there because it enables me all of this great stuff. There's also another one called Flashback Labs, where they create memories based off of the data that you share with them. And that's also super cool. They kind of fine-tune their own models utilizing zero-G compute. They use our storage. They're deployed on our chain. So they're using all of the different services together. And that's where it becomes very powerful. That one-stop shop experience is something that's not found on any other chain. So data availability, we took a fundamentally like a first principles approach. So what other companies have done, they said basically like, based on this architecture, what's the maximum we can get out of it? And so they were like 20 megabytes per second. I think Solana Firedancer is maybe about a gigabyte per second or so. And they're like, okay, well, this gets our transaction costs really low and we can have significantly more data throughput. So you can build bigger size applications. We didn't start from there. We basically said, what is required for AI workloads? We looked at modern data centers and it's hundreds of gigabytes, even terabytes per second. Wow. And we're like, well, if you need this level of workload, how do we architect a system that can actually get there? And so our data availability layer, per consensus layer, we expect about 50 gigabytes per second in throughput. And then we can also horizontally scale it so that you can have multiple consensus layers, because that becomes the bottleneck effectively, that can then interact with more nodes and then effectively have infinite scale. And so that was really the purpose, build it for AI specific use cases. So that was first principles thinking, very different from what other chains have done. Yeah, so the thing that you get here as compared to like doing it on OpenAI or some of these other services is that you can choose whatever model you want. And so it has to be open source, of course, because we can't access proprietary level models. I mean, you technically could, but then you're not really doing decentralized AI, you're just a front wrapper. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that you get verifiability. So right now we use something called TEs, Trusted Execution Environments, for these graphic cards. And it's actually a separate hardware layer on those cards that gives you that environment where it's completely private and you can verify the computation that happens in there. So if you want to know this graphics card with this type of model is running this type of inference, you can completely verify it through the TE. And that's not something that you generally get in kind of this black box AI model. And so it's a very different value proposition. It's a very complex legal question depending on the use case that you choose, but because you have an immutable ledger, effectively, you can trace back and see everything that happened. So it's a sense, it's called provenance. You know exactly when the data kind of changed hands and if the data was modified in some way because the hashes don't match anymore between that data. So for example, if you put, let's say I take a photo right now and it's directly uploaded to the storage network, and it has all the signatures of like, this is a straight pull from the camera. And then I run some AI algorithm on top of that to slightly modify and create like a deepfake type of image. The hash won't match anymore, and because you have that record, then there is a change in that signature of that image. And so then effectively you can say the truth of the image is this, you can point to it, but this thing that you're looking at is no longer the previous image that you had. And so that's the power of immutable records. And especially if you fast forward 10 years from now, if you start having hyper smart AI agents, they will eventually figure out how to break into database systems and modify records and then say like, this is my version of the truth. There's a bunch of images in here that show that I didn't do it. But then if you have an immutable ledger that a lot of people agree on, then you're like, well, you're actually trying to cheat. This was the original image. This is what you submitted. You're trying to cheat the system. So we're going to slash your resources. And so for AI safety specific applications, decentralized AI is super essential for this future where we're not just using AI for like, hey, write this research report or order, this pizza for me, to like actually running like physical systems in reality. Yeah, so the entry point is definitely our website and also our hub. You can go to hub.0g.ai. You can figure out how to acquire tokens. You can look at some of the applications that are building on the 0G chain. You can interact with the different applications that are there. Like I mentioned AIverse already, Dormant AI, Flashback Labs. And so we'll create a place where you can actually see what the applications are. There'll be, Jane, which is more of a DeFi type of layer that has AI rebalancing in it. So there's going to be a lot of options to interact with the chain, and even just as simple as like creating a wallet, moving some tokens through the bridge from somewhere else, like all of these activities you can play around with on day one. Or if you're a developer and a builder, you can actually use some of these infrastructure components like storage and compute and build something new with it. So there's a couple that won't be released on day one that I'm very excited about. So this future that I mentioned around people coming together, building their own models. So there's actually an application that's being built around it.
Oh, okay.
There's kind of a version of it now through Balkanium Labs, which is decentralized federated learning. But this one will actually then enable you to also launch a token and do all of those aspects.
I see.
And then reap the benefits from your kind of creation. So it's called BMO. So very excited about that launching. AIverse is also very exciting, where we created the standard called INFT, where for the first time, if this INFT is in your wallet and it's effectively an agent, you can say that that AI agent fully belongs to me. And so AIverse is the platform to create these agents and then also to make them tradable. If the AI agent, for example, is a travel booking agent, it helps other agents like book travel for whoever owns them, then it should reap some reward, right? And that reward can then belong to you. Yeah, it was a very complex process to figure out, but yesterday we announced a $400 million pipe and into a company called Flora that is then rebranding into Zero Stack. And so very excited about that achievement. Worked together with Daniel Faria, who is my co-founder in Zero Stack. He previously architected a company called DFDV, which was the first and one of the largest Solana treasury companies. And it's also the second best performing DAT after MicroStrategy, according to MSNBC. So very, very experienced team, helped a lot and navigated a lot of the legal kind of roadblocks. Because there's a lot of challenges around, first of all, the company structure, like how do you do it? Do you do a change of control? Do you do that and then do a shareholder vote? How do you stay regulatory compliant? And we had so many different law firms to align. So we've got legal counsel for it's called effectively a shell company. We've got legal counsel there. We have legal counsel for Zero Gravity Labs, legal counsel for Zero G Foundation, legal counsel for Zero Stack, and then we have local counsel in Cayman, local counsel in Singapore, because all of these different entities need to be aligned. And even legal counsel in Toronto as well, because the headquarters of the kind of shell company is in Toronto. And so you have all these different parties that need to be aligned on all these different issues. And then it's very much about timing. When do you need to sign what? How do you change control? How do you create like shareholder agreements? All of those aspects. How do you do in-kind contributions? How do you move and contribute assets from different stakeholders? All of those are very complex legal, compliance, tax issues. And so we have to navigate all of those. And so sometimes we think we solved something, another roadblock comes, and we have to kind of navigate around it. And it changes the entire structure. Like, it's so interdependent. And as long as the kind of the quality of company is very high, then it can become continuously be a strong trend. Yeah, we're very heavily invested in Korea. It's one of our key markets, and I've been probably spending almost every month this year in Korea, so it feels like nice to be back. So it feels like a second home in some ways. But for example, we signed the largest deal to date with KBW. It's a 3-year deal, effectively. So we're very excited about supporting it multi-year. We have local team members. We've done hackathons. We work with local builders. We have local validators. We have local partners, kind of Web2 companies that want to partner with us. We have local investors like Samsung Next, Leica Ventures, Nouns Ventures. And so really heavy emphasis on the Korean ecosystem. And so we consistently want to work with local partners, media companies, and other kind of conglomerates over time to build something very special and to continuously push our mission of making AI public good.